China's county level cities and counties. So this makes us the only hotel chain that both covers the widest terrain but also the deepest penetration into China. So it does give us some unique insights into the new Chinese consumer, especially the lower tier city Chinese consumer, which is why we've been asked to come today to share some of our insights. So thank you very much, George, for having me, and looking forward to our conversation today.
Thanks, Lei. Tujia, so what do you guys do? How are you different from Airbnb?
First, nice to be here to introduce Tujia to all of you. So Tujia is the #1 home sharing booking platform in China. We have over 50% market share in China. And you can see that I'm the CFO of Tujia, and also I'm the CEO of Mai. Mai is another app we acquired back to 2016. So in addition to Mai, we still have all other channels. For instance, we own the homestay button in Ctrip app and in China app. And also we distribute our over 2.4 million houses available online. We distribute these inventories through all other channels like 58, Ali, and a bunch of other smaller channels in China. So I've asked many times how we, Tujia differentiate from us from Airbnb. So I've introduced a few, like we're the biggest one. We have the most distribution channels in China. And also, in addition to the online platform, we also have some offline business. We provide full service to the homeowners in China. For instance, we provide these run by agency services to homeowners so they can leave their houses to us. And also we have a smart lock business, so we help these homeowners to change their locks to smart lock, and also with the facial recognition technologies, we can monitor and control these houses through the lock. Well, I think that's how we differentiate us.
All right. So, Stephen, I don't think you need to introduce Booking.com. But your China strategy is probably of interest. You invested in Ctrip, but you have also invested in Meituan. You have also invested in Didi. You also have your own app, which is working, very well in China. In my last 3 trips outside of China, I used Booking to make my hotel bookings. So, what are you doing in China?
Thank you for having me, and good morning, everybody. Well, China, it's on. Without China, you will miss, I think, what is the biggest growth driver of a company. And there is 200 million outbound trips made per year. And I think you showed the slides in 2011, you dropped that name. We opened the first office in China in 2010. So I think we had the same strategy there. Yeah. Since then, we grew quite a bit. Obviously, Booking is quite big globally. We have a lot of outbound destinations covered for the Chinese, and that got us starting in China. And then we really picked up nicely with the outbound traveler in China. But we also see that bringing only hotel bookings is not enough for the Chinese. Right? So you need your, let's say, traffic daddies, your sugar daddies that brings you traffic to feed into your app. So you need partnerships like Meituan and Ctrip. And you need transport. People like to use Didi and Grab and those companies to go from hotel to house and go around. So if you want to, as far as I know, and I'm not in China for that long, you need to have strong partnerships, and that is what Booking stands for in China and outside China to cater to the Chinese needs.
Right. So so you know who are here and why they can talk about China. Let's get into it. Okay. So this is a study published by Boston Consulting Group, again in 2010. The title of this study is Taking Off. you can still find the PDF online, right? So they put the market into 3 segments, inexperienced mass market, experienced mass market, and the affluent market. This is a study published by McKinsey late last year. So just about 8 years later, now the market become 8 segments, a lot more. It seems like the market has gone very segmented on the consumer side. So my first question to you guys is, do you see that in your business of the further segmentation of the market, and how are you adapting to this trend? We'll start with Lei.
Okay. I think it's interesting to show sort of 2 snapshots in time, right? When we looked at the 2010 version, what you had was a huge number of consumers being relatively uneducated, unsophisticated. This is why there is that sort of inexperienced traveler segment. But when you look at the snapshot of what it is today, I think what you see is that with the prevalence of mobile devices always being on, everyone having access to the same forums, the same apps, reviews being a part of everyday life, WeChat friend circles sharing all of your experiences so that you have not only sort of PR influencers but also social influencers in your own network. People have become much more knowledgeable, right? And this is why, based on this knowledge, there is a much more reduction of that sort of uneducated segment, where people now have much more diverse needs. So I believe this is a very relevant topic for today.
So for OU, when you enter China, do you have a particular segment you wanted to target? Or did you go in to say, I actually want to target all of them?
I think we go in still wanting to make sure that we want to be the biggest. So by being the biggest, you have to target all consumer segments. And so you take out all of the segmentation and you look at what are some of the overarching trends, right? And one overarching trend is the need for leisure everywhere, right? Another arching trend is the need for maximization of value for money, right? Everyone has been brought up in the digital age, so everyone always has this need to constantly compare when they do their shopping, right? They want to find the best deal. So this need for maximization of consumer needs. Everyone wants to improve their own consumer experience. So those are, and of course, last one, as Stephen has alluded to, everyone has already built in some of their own consumer behaviors. So you need to already leverage those existing consumer behaviors rather than try to build new ones. So strong partnerships, super important. So these are the factors where if you want to be a biggest player in China, you have to play upon, rather than just to cater to one specific segment.
Okay. So this is an interesting market entry strategy, right? Most business school, test book will say, if you're entering a huge market, pick your segment and target very specifically. But OU took a different approach. They're targeting the whole market with a value proposition, right? So what about Tujia? Are you also serving the whole market, or are you targeting specific market segments?
We're serving the whole market first. In fact, we start our business back to late 2011, basically. Okay. So, but in the past, well, including this year, in the past 3 years, 2017, 18, and 19, our GMV, our revenue grows 30 times, 30. So you can see the trend. The trend, part of because now we have a strong, experienced management team, including myself, and also because we see more and more demand in the market. Demand from the first and second tier cities, demand also from these lower tier cities, like the 3, 4, 5 tier cities. Demand in these first tier city and second tier city and these travel destination cities. Consumers or travelers want to visit these locations, and also demand for these overseas cities. We start our overseas business from last year. So we have, as I mentioned, we have 2.4 million houses available. They are, basically all over China. Talking about the experience, I think now the consumers, the travelers, they just don't want to stay in these standardized hotel rooms. They want something different. They want something to more, help them to feel like they are not staying at home at their home city, but they are in a totally different environment, totally different areas, so they can experience more. They can experience some local culture, some local things. All these they can have or they can find on our platform. I think that's how we service these diversified demands in the market.
Okay, so that's another brand that is targeting everybody in China. Booking?
Well, I think I have to admit that we did the same. I don't think the segments all of a sudden fell from blue sky. I think it grew. Right? If you bring our biggest value proposition is selection and ease of use. So if you bring a lot of selection, then you will soon see what converts best. And you better get your selection out there if it converts. Right? So, and then slowly over time, we started with hotels, the bigger hotels, and slowly we moved towards hotels, apartments and villas. I'm not saying that we didn't do apartments 5 years ago. I happened to be involved in building our selection with a few people in this room, and we saw conversion going up on certain property types, and we had to rush because the demand was so high. Apparently, we found a few different booker types that were booking hotels previously, but now they saw a different option, they immediately grabbed it. So the segments were already hidden in a person, but the supply was not there. And now I think we have a variety of supply and selection, those segments emerged.
So I think this strategy might work for these big brands, may not work for everybody. I still would recommend you look at, especially the McKinsey report, and look at their different segmentation and look at which are the ones most relevant to you. Even for a huge brand like Booking, I think initially the people who are using the Booking app are people who used to live outside of China. They know Booking, they know Expedia. Right? Those were the seed users. Then it went from there. So you still need to start from somewhere instead of going in and say, I target everybody. So that brings me to the second question. So we're talking about the new Chinese traveler. We're assuming there's an old Chinese traveler, right? There's got to be, right? So what are the old Chinese travelers? Your impression? I'll start with Steve. So when you see Chinese tourists a few years ago outside of China, what was your impression of the old Chinese tourists?
Yeah, well, I live in the center of Amsterdam, and so yeah, the old Chinese traveler travel in a group with hats, and maybe following a flag, and shop, and eat in big Chinese restaurants in Chinatown.
All right.
Which is awesome.
Okay.
And they're still there. And I think out of the 170 million outbound trips booked, 1/3 is still booked like this. That is 50, 60 million outbound trips a year. Don't underestimate that number, it's huge. But yeah, slowly but surely, a new generation stood up. I think in 2010, clearly there was a change, 2015, and then the steep increase of millennials booking, and now Generation Z is using us, and others, of course. Way more online, way more app-driven, social-driven, recommendation, no search. So you cannot buy your traffic with PPC. It's not possible in China, or only for part of it is possible, for a large part it isn't. So the new travelers, I don't think there's all that it's replaced. Partly it's replaced. So I think it's still there, but the rest grew so fast, and that's the new part of it.
Warren, can I get your perspective on the old versus the new?
Yes, I agree with Steve. The hat, flag, Chinese food, but I think it means the hot water. And for Tujia, as a matter of fact, we don't serve these old travelers because they will travel in a group, like 20, 30 people at least. So for these homestay business, generally we service this small group of people, like you travel with your family, with your friends, with your pets, so with your kid, and you stay in a villa, in an apartment with 2-3 bedrooms. So people stay together, so they can share all this experience. They can have some leisure time after a holiday trip with local experience. And generally, they are these young generations, 20, 30, maybe 40, generally young generations. They want something different with these old Chinese travelers, maybe their parents' generations.
Lei, you remember those people?
Of course. So I think if you look back 10 years from now and versus what it is today, the biggest difference really is, you go from uneducated traveler in a more controlled setting with very little choice, consumer choice, to one where you have now a much more educated consumer and in search with the ambition and the confidence to search for their own experiences and willing to share. So a couple of examples, if you, for example, look at TripAdvisor, you go to any restaurants today and the number of Chinese reviews are huge, have exploded over the last 2-3 years. If I come to Singapore, I may open up the MPing and I may look at the top restaurants in Singapore and they will be well reviewed by, again, Chinese consumers. So it's this education of the consumer, sharing of that social within their social circle, and influencing others in their sphere. That's become much more prevalent.
I think Steve made a good point of saying that the old Chinese tourists are still here, so they were not completely replaced by the new Chinese tourists, right? When you have the new Chinese tourists in Beijing, Shanghai, in the first-tier cities, you still have the old way of traveling, coming from the lower-tier cities. So bear that in mind. I think that's also consistent with the fact that the market is a lot more segmented today than it was before. So that brings me to another question about, there's a Chinese term called 小镇青年. So what that means is youth from small cities, right? They're playing an increasingly important role in the overall consumer market, right? And they're mostly living in lower tier cities. I think for Oyo, right? When you first entered the market, even today, to be honest, personally, I haven't seen a single Oyo hotel myself, not a single one, right? And the reason, but they're the biggest single branded hotel company in China now. Why? Why? I think they're in lower tier cities. I don't go there, that much. So can you tell us why you chose this strategy of starting from lower tier cities?
Okay. Well, the way that China works is that there are about 300 provincial level cities, each with an average population of maybe 4 to 5 million people, and spanning a big geographic area. And within the provincial level cities, there are 3,000 county to county level cities, and maybe 40,000 plus townships, okay? So when we talk about the Chinese consumer, what we see is the tip of the iceberg. People who are living in the 40, 50 top urban clusters, right? And they are the people who are primarily the ones who are doing outbound trips, right? But in reality, they make up of maybe 10-15% of China's population. There are literally 1 billion people living in the lower tier cities with the similar needs as those in top tier cities. So when we talk about lower tier city consumers, there are some misconceptions that we typically like to clear up, right? There is one misconception, which is they tend to be uneducated or unsophisticated consumers. And like what we said earlier, these actually tend to be consumers who are with education in top tier cities, worked there already, maybe even abroad, with already mobile, smart mobile, and access to all the forums and apps. So they're very educated, right? We may have the misconception that they don't have the ability to pay, right? In reality, the cost of living is much lower in lower tier cities, so they're able to divert a much higher percent of their income to leisure spend, right? So they have the ability to pay, but they are very much, as I said earlier, caring about value for money. Right? They want to have the best experience, but at a very strong value for money. This is why companies like Pinduoduo, with a $40 billion valuation, focused on connecting the consumer directly with the producer and eliminating all the inefficiencies in between. In a way, this is what Oyo Julian does, right? So we look at those hotels with very low occupancy rates, we take over them, and we give a very strong price to our consumer with an improved experience to maximize their value for money, right? And also in the process, we bring much higher asset utilization for our hotel owners, right? And the third misconception that people may have is that, these Chinese consumers in lower tier cities will follow the same footsteps as their predecessors from 10 years ago. Meaning, the hat, the flag, coming to Southeast Asia first before they go to other countries, with tours. But in reality, with all of these social influencers with much more knowledge and many more expertise in their social circle, I believe we will see a much more diversified new Chinese consumer compared to before. There will still be the flag and the hat, but as a percent of the total, it will come down.
That's a very interesting strategy. It's a foreign brand, right? Pinduoduo, Pinduoduo is a local brand. I can understand. They start from lower tier cities. They provide value, but for a foreign brand to coming to China and start from the really small cities and not even coming to Beijing and Shanghai, that's a very interesting strategy. I think that's something to consider. Depending on your product, that could be a viable segment to target when you first come to China.
I can add to that.
Yes,
So
please.
we saw more or less the same behavior that in tier 1 cities, the people like to go outbound, and tier 2, tier 3 cities like to travel to the tier 1 city. So you have to adjust your product. Your selection should be okay and broadened. Plus, 8 travel festivals, promotions, Golden Week, Chinese New Year are typically booked by tier 2 to tier 1 city bookers. And to the contrary of the tier 1 cities who want to go outbound, they want premium products, more experiences, and they like to have good value for money, but less sensitive for pricing. Yeah, we see the same behavior.
All right, for Tujia, your inventory, for example, what percentage of inventory are in first tier cities and what are in lower tier cities?
We used to, most of our inventories and consumers are from tier 1, tier 2 cities, and also from these travel destination cities in China like Sanya, Guilin. But now we see more and more consumers and also inventories are from these lower tier cities. And I think consumers from lower tier cities, they are totally different with these consumers from first and second tier cities. Consumers, they use different apps, they listen to different musics, they watch different videos, and they prefer different brands. But the same is they want to experience something different, something new to their ordinary lives. So that's why they want to travel to, as you mentioned, to the first tier and second tier cities to watch these big cities. And they want something different, so they don't want some hotel brand they can fun in the 3 and 4 tier cities, so they want something different. That's why they choose the homestays. We see, some consumers from lower tier city travelers, they spend like their monthly salary, like 3,000-4,000 RMB per night. They book this superior apartment or villas in the first tier cities, just to take photos and share with their friends in WeChat.
That actually brings us to another topic. I think a discussion of China will not be complete if we don't talk about the whole digital environment and the consumer journey, right? So I was here yesterday for the WeChat session. I think it was one of the best attended sessions. So I think as soon as you mention the word WeChat, you get people's attention, right? But there are also a lot more other apps that are still relevant, right? So let me start with Steve. So for a typical Booking.com traveler, what is their kind of journey? How do they discover you? How do they book? How do they use you while they're staying and post-stay?
Well, that brings immediately a challenge, because what we had in place didn't quite work in China, right? We cannot buy traffic like we used to do with our search engines, so we have to reinvent ourselves, and there was no real example in China to learn from. So first, when we entered the market in 2010, we did what we always have been doing, and use traffic drivers to direct them to our website. That worked quite well. But different than from Europe, it didn't stay like that, right? We had to change, and we had to find partners to make sure that our app is downloaded, used. So pre-installs in Huawei phones is one of the moves that we had to make. Then you have to drive your traffic to these apps with big Meituan or Ctrip or WeChat, for that matter, to drive your traffic in your app. The app itself is also funny, because Chinese people don't really search. They like to get inspired. And if you look at our app, I think half of the screen is search. The other half is search results. So this needs to go, because they don't search. So we have to experiment in this particular layout, or what part is available real estate in the app and what's not. And then the normal book process is also a journey for us. The confirmation email that we typically like to send out is not received, because many Chinese people don't have email. And I can talk for hours about the struggles we had, but it all looked pretty messy. But at the end, we solved the big roadblocks: payment, confirmation, search, selection, look and feel of the app, and selection and the properties that got booked. Post-stay, that's another area that we continuously work on. Chinese, as far as I understand, they do like to leave reviews, but most reviews on different blogs than our reviews that can be reused for other bookers to inspire other bookers. So the whole post-stay experience also needs engineering to help other Chinese to get back in your ecosystem. The normal route that we normally would take with reviews is not always applicable for the Chinese bookers, because they use all different blogs. And to get your next future booker inspired to get it back in your ecosystem. That's just a sliver of the journey that.
All right. So if I ask you, what's the number one kind of discovery platform for you in China, for your brand, what would you say?
The platform that you can discover our
discover about Booking.com. Someone just learned for the first time about, I can book hotels overseas on this new thing called Booking.com.
Yeah, I think today Meituan.
Meituan. Wow. Okay. Not WeChat.
Also,
okay.
we even have a mini program in WeChat. Right?
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
But as I said, the partners is so important for the foreign brands.
Yeah.
That, actually, it's a combination of two, I guess.
Okay. For Warren, for Tujia, what's that consumer journey look like for you guys?
We are a local company in China, so we have all this experience in the internet environment in China. So basically, we use everything we can, like this iOS store and Android store, these search engines. Still, I think it still works, but the ROI or the returns on these channels may not that good as these Android store and iOS stores. And also we have this, we use all these social medias like the Weibo and WeChat, Douyin and Little Red Book, Xiaohongshu. And also we are we have all these partnership with Stitchit and Qunar and Tongzhong Yilong. So and also we reach these consumers through their channels.
What about Oyo? What's your consumer journey?
Yeah, actually, for a company that's only been in China for the last 18, 20 months or so, actually you'll be surprised to know that APP is our biggest occupancy channel right now. Right? But we are very aware of the fact that for most of the consumers, hotel booking is a sort of a low frequency transaction. So you're not going to change their behavior. And the consumer journey has to stay what it was before for most of the consumers. This means, coming back to Stephen's point, partnerships are so important. We have to be very open in working with every single OTA platform. But in addition, what we can do, and we can do this better than a traditional hotel chain, is to look also for new partnerships. We have special partnerships with Alipay, with WeChat, mini apps, but also with corporate partners, with TMCs. So these are the traffic channels that really provide value for our hotel partners. Because without us, they would never have access to these. And in addition, for them, it's very difficult as a standalone operations to have any kind of negotiation power or even the ability to really manage any of these one single channels. So this is how we do on their behalf the negotiation with all of these partners, and we bring the traffic to them.
All right, understand. Okay, so we're still on the topic of the digital ecosystem. I want to do a quick kind of a series of questions to each of you, right? I'll give you a name of an app. You tell me the first word that comes to your mind about that app, okay? So I'll start with Lei. Meituan.
Everywhere, every day.
Okay, that's a lot of words. Okay. Tujia. No. Tujia.
Diverse.
Okay. Weibo.
Robot.
Okay. All right. Now, Stephen, you ready? Citrip.
Inspiring.
Okay. WeChat.
Elementary.
Oh, elementary. Okay, interesting. Douyin.
No knowledge. For me.
Okay. All right. Good. And Warren. Meituan. Competitor. Okay. Let me think. Booking.com. Grandfather.
We are the shareholder of all shareholders.
Oyo.
Diversify.
So I think that's basically a very high level overview of the consumer journey for these very typical online travel services in China, right? So before we conclude, I want to get each one of you to give some recommendations to our audience. If for someone who's new to China or they're struggling with their China strategy, what are some of the do's and don'ts for that brand. Lei?
Okay. I think even though all three of us said we're targeting everyone, right? I think the biggest don't is don't be average in what you do, right? Because we are all targeting consumers by giving a value proposition that is extreme in some way. For oil, I give extreme value for money, right? So this will always allow me to survive.
Like Pinduoduo.
Exactly. So don't be average. I think that's my biggest advice.
Okay. Warren?
I think first be ready, be prepared for the competition from your Chinese competitors. So generally what you do in like 6 months, they will have some very similar things in the China market with a high efficiency than what you do outside China. So be prepared for that. And the second, when you travel to China, use Tujia. Now booking the oil and Tujia.
All right, Stephen?
Yeah, localize your app, have your marketing cater to the Chinese, work with partners, get your payments in order, work on your selection, go full in, no half-baked, not average, and make sure you have your close eye on your competition.
So I want to ask the audience a question, a show of hands, right? If I ask you, do Chinese people care about the environment and sustainability? If you say yes, can you raise your hand? Okay, yeah, okay, some. So, do they care? I'm going to put this question to you, right? What does sustainability mean for the industry, for your company, and for the market? So, Booking.com, Skyscanner, Ctrip, TripAdvisor, Visa, and a few huge companies have launched this initiative, right? Stephen, can you talk a little bit about this?
Yeah, thank you. Yes, I can talk a little bit about this. Booking is known for having, for a few years already, a Booking Cares program, where we have a Booking Cares fund, where we give money to people who like to contribute to sustainability or local domestic economies. Clean beaches can be anything, and Booking Boost, we fund initiatives to young entrepreneurs who have profit earmark and create companies for sustainability and ecotourism. And not that long ago, we launched a travel list together with the Duke of Sussex, the brother of the future King of UK, and to make a stand, right? I don't have kids, and I'm gone maybe in 30 years, but most of you have kids, and I urge everybody to really look into this. I mean, sustainable tourism is a little bit contradictory, because the best way to preserve the earth is not travel too much, but as we are doing it, make sure you do it in such a way that your kids also have something to look at in 30 years. It's good for your business to do that. 82% of the Chinese are actually interested in booking in eco-travel.
82%?
82%,
right.
Which is way more than I expected. And it can very well be there is some opportunity there if you put this IMARC as your strategy. 52% of the Chinese are actually willing to do volunteer work when in the destination and look at alternative transportation when they are there, which is, to the contrary of the European or the Americans, twice as high. That's very important, and I'm very happy to see this, because apparently we are doing this with them and they are totally with us.
Warren, what does sustainability mean for Tujia as you expand your inventory into overseas markets?
Well, I think in the China market, I will say first, the sustainability means to us is most of our inventories are not from these the hotel, these centralized buildings, but it's really diversified homestay business. So in China market, I think now there's about 40 to 50 million houses available in the market. These are weekend houses in the market. So our business help these homeowners, the house owners, or the real estate developers to use these weekend houses in the market to serve these travelers in all these tier cities. So I think that's the little contribution we do to the environment, to the economies in China.
Does Oyo have a position on sustainability?
Yeah, I think similar to Tujia, we look at sort of the health of the ecosystem, right? In China, there are close to 1 million standalone hotels with owners that own their properties but don't know how to compete with other chains. They don't know how to capture the evolving trends of the Chinese consumer, and they don't know how to work with partners. So for these hotel owners, we provide what is called a minimum guarantee, telling them that their tomorrow will not be worse than today. We support them with capex renovation transformation to help them prolong the life cycle of their property. We help them with operations to improve the overall experience for the consumer. And of course, we, on their behalf, work with all of the traffic partners to make sure that their properties are well distributed. So overall, we would like to see more of these small hotel owners survive.
Cool. As I have promised, I want to give you some time to ask questions. Anything you want to ask about China to the panelists? Are there any questions? Please raise your hand. We'll give you a mic. Please say who you are and who you want to address the question to.
My name's Gary Paalman. I actually wrote a book called The New Chinese Traveler 5 years ago, and I reread it recently, and it's all out of date.
Do you need a domain name for that book?
I did have it.
I can sell you a domain.
I have it.
Okay.
But I registered it after you, 2013. George, I would like to say I've been to a lot of sessions this week, and this is by far the best one. It's very insightful,
Thank you.
And your panel has done a great job. One of the questions I would like to ask is, we focus very much around the world about Chinese outbound travel, and obviously all the trends are changing. But one of the big drivers is domestic travel. It grows so fast and it's changing very fast. How do you, in your businesses, prepare for the future outbound from using domestic travel trends?
Maybe Lei, you should address this first. I think a lot of your customers are booking domestically.
Yes.
Today.
Because Oyo Jiudian for us is mostly focusing on China, right? But even internally, we are building an outbound business to help the Chinese consumers to gradually evolve to other countries. Because once they know their brand, once they know what you stand for, they continue to come back, right? But still coming back to the points we talked about earlier, you gotta have a good experience, you gotta have great value for money, and you gotta be there everywhere.
I think, Warren, you guys are also expanding into overseas markets, right?
Yeah.
How are you leveraging your, domestic audience and traffic for that part of the business?
Yes, we do. We start our overseas business in the late 2017. We start first in the tiers cities and countries near China. For instance, Japan, Korea, Southeast Asia, Taiwan, Hong Kong. These areas and countries are the first choice of these Chinese outbound tourists. And we used to serve them in China and within China. And we see that the movement that the first tier and second tier cities travelers, these are new Chinese travelers, they want to go abroad, become the outbound travelers. And the second, the three, four, five tier city travelers, they target the first tier and second tier cities. So we serve all of them. That's why we serve them within China and we serve them outbound business.
Okay.
Also, we can leverage the Trip.com, the controlling shareholder of Tujia. So we leverage their resources in China and outside China to help us to build up the inventories in these outside China and to attract these travelers to serve them. in these areas and countries.
Okay, maybe one more question. If there's no question, oh, okay.
Hi, my name is Meg, and I represent Tanzania and a safari company in Tanzania. So we're talking about really outbound, multiple overseas. And one of the things that I'm struggling with a little bit is the very Asian concept of great value for low cost. And here is a destination that is not low cost, or if you try to do it low cost, you lose value. So how do we represent this to the consumer or to an Asian travel company that we might partner with? Do we emphasize cost benefit? What do we do to bridge that gap?
Lei, you want to address this?
I think this is about as far away from an oil model as you can possibly get. But I think if you look at countries like Fiji, like New Zealand, what they have done is really done a very good job marketing their countries to Chinese consumers as a very differentiated and exciting experience, right? And this is done through, mass media such as TV sponsorship, but also through KOL. So maybe something for you to consider, but I'm sure these two gentlemen have much better expertise on this.
I will say, if you cannot cut the cost, you should increase the value to the travelers, right? So you build up all these experience points to them. And also, I think you can cut the cost by serving them with homestays, because always homestays. So it's low cost per capita per stay, generally.
Okay, I think that's it. I want to leave with you a very short video to show you an example of a destination, how they are marketing themselves in China. Hopefully you can take some ideas from this. And then if you have further questions, we'll be around, we can talk with you.